So the sequence that we're going to do today is Abhijata has been doing this 7-day workshop in the mornings. And like there are 1,300 people taking it. It's pretty amazing. I've only done the first day so far. But that's the sequence that we're going to be working with today. And I think you'll like it. So go ahead and sit on whatever you're sitting on. And you may find that it's nicer to sit on a little bit more height than you might normally be used to. When you do sit on more height, it automatically lets your legs descend a little bit more down toward the floor. Sorry, this computer is crooked and it's driving me crazy, so I have to fix that. There's a line in the Analects that Confucius says Confucius would not sit until his mat was straight. Just for teaching by Zoom, he would also not teach until his screen was straight. Okay. I'm muting all y'all. All right. I have this other yoga chair that has more of a backward slant, and so I figured out that I have a yoga chair and then a little yoga barrel, and that's what I put the computer on, so it's more or less the right length for right now. But one chair slants backwards, and so I had to stop using that one because the computer would slide backwards. So now I've got everything set. So turn the soles of the feet up toward the ceiling. And one liability of sitting up a little bit higher is if you have more in the short arm clan, you may not be able to reach your feet quite as easily. But do what you can to turn the soles of the feet upward toward the ceiling. Turn your calf flesh up toward the ceiling, and then use your hands to turn the flesh of your thighs externally as well. And you can squeeze pretty hard. The harder you squeeze your skin to the flesh and the flesh to the bone, the more you'll feel that the femur bones turn in the socket. Right, then press the tops, and you should feel that, but you should also feel like your sitting bones draw inward a little bit more, and that results in a nice lift coming into the chest. And press the feet down and energetically lift those ankles up so you feel even more firmness come into the hips. And lengthen up through your side ribs, make yourself as tall as you can, from the pelvis, through the waist, through each individual rib, all the way up into the armpits, make yourself tall. Keep that height and roll the shoulder bones back. Bring your shoulder blades closer together on your back, away from the neck and into the center of the body and up a little so you feel that chest be both lifted, but also broad, so that the lift is not just an upward vertical lift, but also has this diagonal feature going out to the side. The top edges of the collarbone should also feel that lift. And keeping all that, close your eyes and fold your palms together at your heart. And if you're wearing glasses, you can take them off. And both as on a physical way, it'll help your senses of perception draw inward because the glasses are heavy. And so your eyes don't relax as readily. The bridge of the nose doesn't relax as readily. But also it's a nicely symbolic gesture that what we're actually after with the landscape of yoga is seeing the true self. That space of your own true splendor. And you really don't need glasses to see that. It's what you see through the process of ongoing evolution of consciousness. That's really the basic plot, if you will, of the Yoga Sutras, that Patanjali tells us what yoga is. It's the practice of stilling the fluctuations of the mind and why we do it, so that we come to dwell in the space of our own true splendor. And then the rest of the book is really an outline of the difficulties of that process, the obstacles that we'll encounter on the path, and the ways to overcome those various obstacles. The two main ways are practice, here on your mat, and detachment. One maybe side benefit of this whole COVID pandemic is that we have been forced into a kind of detachment. And coupling that with practice, it is really an occasion to come to appreciate all the things that yoga can really give you in your life. Now turn your awareness to your breath and observe your inhalations and observe your exhalations. Just watch where the breath is moving in your body today, its particular sensation or qualities. And then begin to direct the breath. So as you inhale, make yourself taller from the tailbone all the way up through the head. Keep that height. And as you exhale, move the prana or the energy of the breath outward towards your side ribs and armpits. Inhale, make yourself tall. Keep that height. Exhale, make yourself broad. Inhale, extend yourself. Exhale, expand yourself. And having used the breath to create this inner sense of spaciousness, turn the awareness to the exhalation and follow it like it's a pathway or a thread from the outer world, the outer spaciousness, to the inner world, that inner landscape of you, the domain of yoga. Use your exhalations to take your awareness there. And then from that space within, let's chant 3 Oms together. Follow that sound with your mind. Follow the reverberation with the sound with your mind. And from that space, inhale. Keep your chest well lifted and broad and bring your chin down to your chest and your hands down to your thighs with your palms up. And raise your head and open your eyes. And then since our conduit for yoga is Zoom, and you may need to see your computer screen with your glasses and not just your inner sense of sensation, you can put your glasses back on now. One of the big things that, it was really interesting watching this first day of the Abhijata thing, because it was her first time actually teaching on Zoom also. So she's been, like everyone in the world, at home in her house with her family. And the Iyengar Institute has been closed, and there are quite a few Indian teachers who actually are teaching via Zoom, and it's been neat to be able to take some of their classes. But it was really quite fascinating to be able to witness her, the leader of the whole Iyengar community, working and struggling in the same way that all of us are to convey the teachings of yoga in this new platform. So I was really kind of awe-inspired by that, and her willingness to kind of be, a student of this new method also. And another, one thing she also said is that you really, in this particular time, you don't want to work to physical exhaustion. And so you want to work, but the main aim is really to observe as you're working the effects that the yoga has on you. And so one example of that is Adho Mukha Virasana, downward facing child's pose. So normally when I teach Adho Mukha Virasana at the beginning of class, I teach it really actively, like where we really, really extend the arms out. We even reach to the side so we get length in the side body and all of that. But she really wanted us to do it more passively. So I have I have an issue with my knee, so I have my blanket behind my knee. But rather than reaching and extending way, way, way out, you're actually just going to bring your head down to the floor and just let your arms go and relax behind you. Okay. This morning, I'm feeling my head doesn't go that readily to the floor. So I'm also taking one of my foam bricks. I've got a blanket behind my knees, got the foam brick, and then I'm just going to put my head on the foam brick. Again, rather than stretching and extending out and making this like a really active pose,
just be in a really passive, very soothing Adho Mukha Virasana. So go ahead and get in that particular pose.
And just observe how this pose kind of helps your awareness draw in from the very beginning. You do want to keep your buttocks on your heels, and so if there is space between your buttocks and your heels, you may want to get an additional blanket and put that between your buttocks and your heels. And then let your back body move downward toward your front body. So that your shoulder blades move in, your middle back moves in. And just sink downward toward the ground. As you feel that back body moving toward the front body, see if you can also feel that your groin releases a little bit more readily. And as you exhale, let your abdomen draw in toward the spine. In a certain way, the front body draws up a little bit to meet the back body going down. Good, and then go ahead and come up. And then just sit in Adho Mukha Virasana. And observe the effect, sit in this version of Virasana. Just observe the effect of that Adho Mukha Virasana. Don't you feel, I feel a little bit just immediately calmer in my brain. A sense of sort of drawing inward is a little bit more palpable. All right, so the next pose that we're gonna do is Adho Mukha Svanasana with support. And she's specified specifically a soft support. So if you do have one of the harder wood blankets, you would maybe want to wood blocks. You might want to put a blanket on top of it. Or you could use a bolster if you have the right size bolster. You can also fold up your blanket where it's about the size of a block if that's the support you need. And then press your hands down into the floor. Press down strongly through the thumb and the first finger. Keep your arms straight as you push back. And remember, one of the tricks of working with this support is that you kind of have to forget it's there until you're all the way in the pose. And then just let your head hang down. Again, you're aiming at getting the very top of the forehead supported. We do this head supported downward facing dog a lot of times toward the end of class as part of the immunity sequence. That was another really fascinating thing about this first sequence. It's the only one, she's on day 3, but I've only had a chance to work with the first one so far. But it actually has the sequence she chose to teach actually has most of the poses from the immunity sequence in it. And then it also has some poses from the emotional stability sequence. So I thought that was really a pretty fascinating choice on her part as well. Then walk forward till your feet are right underneath your hips. Place your hands on your pelvic bones. Roll your shoulder bones back and come all the way up. And stand in Tadasana. And observe the effect of that Adho Mukha Svanasana on your first Tadasana of the day. So that, for me, that calmness that kind of came with the Adho Mukha Virasana and the Adho Mukha Svanasana is here in the Tadasana. So I feel nicely grounded in my heels. And I already feel from the very beginning that my front brain has kind of moved more to the back brain. And we're going to do Adho Mukha Svanasana again, but this time taking some support for the hands so you can feel the difference in the pose. So this one won't have the head support, though you could arrange it to have head support. But you want to either go to the wall and turn your thumb and your first finger against the wall, or you can put your hands up on bricks, which also you could put at the wall, or if you don't have wall space, you can just put them on your mat. And then you might want to flip a little bit of your sticky mat over your bricks. And then you'll come into downward facing dog again, with some kind of assistance for the hands. And either pressing the thumb and the first finger against the wall, or having your hands up on bricks. And observe when you change the dynamic of the pose like this. I have my own hands up on bricks. But either way, you should feel that there's more weight back into the legs. And when you elevate the hands or support the work of the hands, you get more stability in the legs. It's easier to get that weight back, so you really feel it in the heels. Either press your hands down into the bricks or into the wall and come up onto the balls of the feet a little bit. Press down into the balls of the feet and the big toe, and then extend from your arches back through your heels, and also move that front ankle bone back, so that you're using really the muscles, let's say, of the feet by reaching through the arches and moving the top ankle bone back to get even more weight back into the legs. And when I really did those two things, I could also really feel my sitting bones, and having the sitting bones move and extend really the energy downward toward the heels. Okay, and then walk forward till your feet are right underneath your hips. Place your hands on your pelvic bones. Roll your shoulder bones back and come all the way up and stand in Tadasana again. Observing the effect of that particular Adho Mukha Svanasana on you. So I personally feel a little bit more lift up into the armpits, and I feel actually like I got a little bit taller. Still feel a nice rooting in the heels. And I'm also beginning to feel my abdomen draw in and up a little bit more readily. And I'm just saying those things because what I have with me in the room is my own experience, and so I have to kind of teach from that, really be a student of myself, because I really can't see all in the same way. So please don't take that as you should be feeling exactly what I'm feeling. Different people's bodies are different. But do take it as a model of the kind of inquiry that you should be making about how the poses make you feel. On every level, the physical to the mental, emotional, psychological. All right. This is the next thing she taught is something I've actually had never done before. It was really quite interesting. There are a lot of different versions of Uttanasana that we work with. You know that we've been working a lot with the one where you support the crown of the head and have the hands out wide. We do that one a lot. There's also one that's called hanging Uttanasana, where you interlace your hands and your elbows and reach down. But she actually taught a combination of those things. She had our head supported, but then did the elbow interlace with the head supported. And it's a very different feeling Uttanasana. I really feel nice grounding in the head, but that pull of the elbows is nice because it really helps the back kind of release. And I feel a nice sensation of opening in the armpits as well. And so give that a go. Try and build up some support so you can have the very crown of your head supported. Try and keep the weight where it is right between the ball of the foot and the heel. And then interlace your thumbs in your elbows. Again, if you don't, you don't have to have all the fancy yoga props. You just, as another really fascinating thing that Avi said, and I hadn't really thought about it, is, when BK Iyengar was had first moved to Pune and was early in his, marriage, was very zealous in his practice, there really weren't yoga props coming to you from Hugger Mugger or wherever you get them. He really looked around his very meager house and saw just what was around that would facilitate his practice. And that sometimes was like actual bricks that might have been there, or a piece of wood, or some kind of chair. And so she pointed out that we actually now have the opportunity to experience that kind of mindset that Mr. Iyengar did when he basically developed the concept of props. You have to kind of look around and see, what can I do? If I really need my head supported, what does my house have within it that I can use as a head support? And I thought that was really cool that she was thinking about things in that way. All right, and then switch the interlace of your thumb so the opposite thumb pulls down. You may find also as you stay in this Uttanasana with the head support that you need a little less support as the time goes on. And so you might need to lower the brick, or that's a nice thing about a stack of books, actually might be better than the bricks in some ways, because you can just take a book off as you extend your spine downward a little bit more. Then go ahead and place your hands on your pelvic bones, roll your shoulder bones back, and come all the way up. And be in Tadasana after that head supported hanging Uttanasana. It's also, to me, quite awe-inspiring or humbling in both to think, I've been doing Iyengar yoga a really long time, since 1994, but I had never done that. Yeah. I'd done the components of it, yeah. But it was really amazing to me that just putting those two different approaches to Uttanasana together gave me a brand new experience in Uttanasana. And I was really delighted by the fact that there's always still something new to learn in Iyengar yoga. All right, so the next one is also part of the immunity sequence too. It's the Prasarada Padottanasana. And we usually have been doing these more at the end of class, but they work really nicely at the beginning of class. And she didn't say per se that these poses are part of the immunity sequence, but it is just interesting to note that, and then her own choices of what she thought the larger worldwide Iyengar yoga community needed in this first class she was teaching via Zoom was things that are part of the immunity sequence was really pretty interesting to me. All right, so go ahead and come into Prasarada Padottanasana. We're going to do the concave version first. All right, so put your hands on the floor, and if your hands don't reach the floor, you can just raise them up with bricks or blocks. Spread your toes. And even here, extend back from the arches through the backs of the heels and move the front of your ankles back. In this action of the bottom foot and the action of the top foot should result in you feeling more engagement in your legs. Lengthen forward through the side ribs. Turn your triceps and feel how you get that nice extension in the front of the body. And then fold forward and bring your head down to the floor. And the more you bring your head in, the more the length will come into the back body, so that the length of the back body kind of matches the length of the front body. But at the same time, as you exhale, draw your abdomen in so that to a degree, the front body meets the movement of the back body. And I have been having you observe a lot, you know, between the poses and coming back into Tadasana, but also observe yourself in the pose. And I was, when I had my head down on the floor just for that little bit before I got up to look at y'all, I really could feel a very soothing sensation coming into the brain just from having been in that pose for just a few seconds. I see that some of you have your hands out wide on your ankles, totally fine, and some of you have your hands in the more Shirshasana 2 shape. And both of them are perfectly fine, and I think you should do whichever one feels better to you. I've talked a lot, right, about, for me, the benefit of having the hands on the ankles is I really feel that broadness coming across the chest and the collarbones. And if you don't know the difference, it's also, you know, you don't always have to only be observing. You can conduct an experiment. You can say, well, what does it feel like while I'm here in Sarada Padottanasana to have my hands in Shirshasana 2? Versus what does it feel like when I have my hands out on my ankles? For me, this morning, what I'm feeling when my hands are in Shirshasana 2 is really a nice feeling in the very crown of my head. More awareness, let's say, of the midline for me of the pose. But when I'm out with my hands on my ankles, I feel more breath in the armpits, in the collarbones. And both of those things are good. I mean, I want a sense of extension in the pose, and I want a sense of expansion in the pose. All right, then regardless of the one that you've picked, go ahead and everyone bring their hands back into the Shirshasana 2 position and use your hands and place your hands on your pelvic bones and then come all the way back up. And stand in Tadasana again and observe the different sensations that you feel in your Tadasana after Prasarada Padottanasana. She didn't put Tadasana in between all these things. It's just a practice I've been working with lately. I feel definitely that my sinuses have drained a little bit more. I feel because the legs were out wide and now they're together, I feel a little bit of that automatic sense of compaction in the outer hips. I feel my heels a little bit more readily going into the floor. And I feel just a little calmer overall in my front brain. Okay, then do a downward facing dog again. You can either take your hand support again if you like that. I have my blocks still here, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, or not. Or you can take your thumb and first finger at the wall, or you could just do a regular dog. But do another downward facing dog. And I'm feeling in this particular dog even more opening in my armpits, which feels really nice. And my heels are, because my hands are elevated, my heels are more readily up the floor. Then keeping your arm action strong, come up onto the balls of the feet a little bit. Press the balls of the feet down, particularly through the big toe base joint. And then from your arches, extend back through the heels, and from the fronts of the ankles, extend back through the heels. So you get even more engagement in the legs. And then walk forward till your feet are right underneath your hips. Place your hands on your pelvic bones. Roll your shoulder bones back and come all the way up. And she did have us do Tadasana at this point, actually, in her when she was teaching, but she said, stand with your feet a little bit apart. And she said in Tadasana, when you keep the feet a little bit apart, sometimes it's actually easier to feel the actions of the pose. I also feel a little bit more width when I stand with my feet a little bit apart in the pelvic region, which is nice. It's often a little easier to move the buttocks down to the heels. Draw your abdomen in and up and lengthen up through the armpits. Roll your shoulder bones back. Bring your shoulder blades closer together on your back, away from the neck and into the center of the body and up a little bit so that you really feel that opening coming all the way up into the chest. I'm also observing with my feet a little bit apart that I not only feel my heels, but I had more of awareness of the balls of the feet. And a little bit easier to spread the toes. All right, so now we're going to do a Trikonasana. So go ahead and get your 2 bricks. Avi also reminded us that it's often, when you're doing standing poses, particularly when you don't want to tire yourself out, you can actually do the standing poses with your back against the wall. Okay. And I think I had heard this before, but I haven't hung on to it really. And we'll try it both ways so you can see. If you do have a wall that you can do your standing pose against, it doesn't have to be a fancy yoga wall like I have, it can be any wall. And you can bring yourself back to the wall. It's very soothing. And it's also, I'm just immediately feeling that as like, wow, I actually feel supported, in this pose. And so it is like less I have to like support my own body. But the other thing that's nice about working with the wall is that it's a really good teacher. It gives you a lot of feedback. For instance, when you go from Utthita Hasta Padasana and you turn your front right leg out, you'll feel that your left buttock moves away from the wall. And to a degree, that's fine, but then it tells you, oh, can I move my left buttock back a little bit? And then you want to keep both of your shoulders and your shoulder blades against the wall and stretch your arms out. And then go ahead and just tip over and then keep your top hand on your hip. And then you'll feel, oh, gee, when I went into this pose, I could feel my torso moved away from the wall. So I'm going to suck my outer hip in and rotate my torso back to the wall. So ideally, you should actually feel both shoulders against the wall, both shoulder blades against the wall, and both sitting bones against the wall. So if you do have the ability to take the support of the wall, do so. And if you don't, that's okay. Just imagine that you have the support of the wall. Looks like many of you do. All right, and then go ahead and come up, press into your back heels, and come all the way back up. Turn your feet back to the center. So I just want to, since it looks like quite a few of you have the wall, some of you even do have fancy rope walls like I do, but even if you don't, let's say that you had a wall that had like it's close to a doorway or it's close to an edge or something, you can line yourself up so that when you reach eventually your top arm up, it actually has like something to hold on to. And that's really nice to get length and extension to the sides of the torso. So let me just pretend I don't have a rope yoga wall for a second, and so I can kind of show you what I mean. I've got this closet I'm turning the thing, so you can see my closet is right here. Right? And so if I were just using this wall, I would want to set myself up so when I turned, I went into the pose, and this edge I could actually hold on to with my hand, okay? So some of you have, I was noticing, have a wall set up kind of like that, or you're doing it near a hallway or a doorway or something. So you can experiment with how to get the best support. Right? You might even say, hey, there's this, it's not like you have to leave your yoga space right now, but you might, just as you're again walking around your house, notice where's a wall or where's an edge that I could actually practice a Trikonasana in a nice way. All right, and use your hands and come all the way back up. Sorry, press down into your feet and stretch up with your top arm and come back up to Tadasana. And then just move yourself a little bit away from the wall so you can feel the effect of that Trikonasana on your Tadasana. And I feel that benefit of the wide leg apart poses, and partly why they're emphasized so much in Iyengar yoga, is that they do create more stability in the hips. And I feel that sometimes more coming back to Tadasana. I feel, wow, my legs are much more drawn together. There's more firmness in that outer hip from having spent some time with my legs apart in a pose called Trikonasana. Okay, so that's the support of with the back body against the wall. And we can also do the pose, we'll go and do it again with the front body turned toward the wall. And what Avi said is when you're feeling more physically fatigued, okay, or you need physical support, you should support the back body. Okay? But you might be also, from all that's going on in the world, mentally fatigued, in which case you should take the support facing the wall. Okay? And I had not really put all of that together in my mind. I think, like I said, I think I probably learned that before, I just had not hung on to it. And so how you do support at the front of the wall is you just stand a little bit away from the wall. Okay? You'll bring your brick down to your hands. And what's nice about with the support of the front of the wall is you see I have my top hand here, and I can use it to turn my torso away from the wall. Okay? And you may find as you come into Trikonasana facing the wall, I mean, you don't want to be so close to the wall that it mushes your nose or anything. Okay? As you do also have to get, kind of have enough space to get your hand close to the wall, but then really cup your top fingers, push into the wall. You do all of your leg actions, but push into the wall. And you'll feel how you can get your torso to turn away from the wall, which is really nice. But also, what's nice about this particular pose is I did find it actually very soothing on the brain, having kind of that closer connection or awareness of the wall. So it's a support for the front body, really, as we're turning away from the wall. Also, your consciousness kind of draws inward as well. Okay, and then press into your heels, use your hands, and come all the way back up. Turn your feet back to the center, and then you'll go over to the other side. And you keep your leg action strong. Your bottom hand is on the brick. But what's nice again about using the wall is you have this ability with your top hand to press those fingers in the wall and really actively turn your torso away from the wall. And you can do any of the standing poses with these two kinds of support. Okay? You can do Trikonasana, Parsvakonasana, Viratu, Ardha Chandrasana, any of those lateral angle poses. You can use the back support of the wall and the front support of the wall. All right, now press into both of your heels and then reach with your top hand and come all the way up. And then turn your feet, bring your feet together. And then turn around and observe the effect of that particular Trikonasana on your Tadasana. Does your brain feel a little bit different? I'm still feeling all the good effect in my legs, but I do feel in a little bit more lift in my chest actually from that work of the arms, but I also keep on feeling that increased feeling of the front brain moving to the back brain. All right, let's do a couple more standing poses, and then we will do some nice seated forward bends, which she taught, and a really lovely Satyabandha at the end. Okay, so let's stand, this time we'll not use the wall unless you liked using the wall, in which case you're welcome to continue working using the wall. So stand with your feet wide apart and your hands on your hips. Oh, you're gonna need a brick so you can bring your feet together. Get a brick and have it handy. We're not gonna use it immediately, we're just gonna use it in a second. So my feet are wide apart. Turn your back left toes in and your front right leg all the way out. Press into the big toe side of your foot. Move your arches back through your heel even here. Really turn that front leg and then bend your knee and just come in and out of this beginning of Virabhadrasana 2 for a second. And remember, we've also been working on don't just bend the knee from the knee alone, but from this opposite outer hip, let that action bend the knee. So cut that outer hip in as you bend the knee down. Cut that outer hip in as you bend the knee down. And then maybe you can see if you can go a little bit lower to form that square. And you really want to keep, as much as you can, the weight on the big toe side of the foot. Well, spread evenly, but it's going to tend to move outward. Yeah. And then take your brick and put it on the inside of your foot. And then this time when you bend your knee again, you may notice that, oh gee, you know what? My ankle is kind of moving away from that brick as I bend my knee. And so try and release your hip a little bit more so that either your foot and your ankle and your big toe all stay in line with the brick as you come into this elbow supported version of Parshvakonasana. You can use the elbow to sit a little bit deeper, but also remember to sit deeper, you really have to extend from that outer hip. And the ability to keep that big toe against the brick really comes from getting a little bit more release in the inner groin. And then come all the way back up. Move the brick out of the way so you can turn your feet back to the center. And just run the experiment on the second side. Okay? Don't use the brick at first, okay? But just bend your knee, working with motion. Remember, the knee bend is not just an action of the leg, but from that opposite outer hip, bend the knee. You can even use your hand to move that outer hip in. And so that action connects with the extension of the foot. And so when I don't have the brick here, I really have the experience that it seems like my foot is pretty stable. But when, say, okay, I'm going to practice in this way that Abby suggested and put the brick against my big toe, and I bend my knee, I actually say, oh, I didn't have quite the stability that I thought I did. And so, you know, sometimes we might use the prop, like to reach down and put the hand on the floor. But the other thing that props are really for is to increase your awareness of what's going on in the pose. The fancy word for that is increasing your proprioception, your ability to perceive yourself. And so we're not per se using the brick for support physically. We're using it as a tool to help us see what's really going on in the pose a little more clearly. All right, and then go ahead and come all the way back up. And again, turn your feet back to the center and stand in Tadasana. And feel, what did Parshvakonasana give your Tadasana? I feel even more outer hip compaction, but I also feel some length coming in to my inner groin. And that length translates even more into a lift up into the chest and up into those outer collarbones. All right, and now you'll need 2 bricks if you have them, but this is really fascinating. We did Parshvakonasana a couple more times, but then she had us use the brick in the same way for Ardha Chandrasana. So we'll not do it without the brick, but it's pretty fascinating when you put your brick in front of the big toe side of the foot, have your other hand on the other brick, and you come into Ardha Chandrasana, you'll notice that there's even more wobbliness in the ankle and the inner foot connection with the brick. So the stability is kind of there automatically in Trikonasana. That's one of the nice things about Trikonasana. It's harder to maintain when you're doing that bent leg action. And even harder still to maintain when you're in this one-legged pose. But see if when you lift your outer hip up a little bit more, top outer hip is what I mean, does that translate into having a little bit more stability in the leg? I see some of you are taking the support of the wall totally fine. We in fact did that in the whole sequence. All right, good. All right, then bend your knee in front, bend the knee you're standing on so you can come out of the pose. And then do your other side. Working with, it's not, it's a harder pose. You're standing on one leg, but just observe, wow, it is really kind of hard in Ardha Chandrasana to keep that stability of the bottom foot. And I'm just looking at my own ankle, it's just kind of wavering away. But I do find if I lift the top leg up a little higher and that gives me space to suck the bottom femur bone in a little bit more. And then I have a little tiny bit more ability to kind of still the fluctuations of the ankle joint. Okay, good. And then release and come down. So bend the front knee, bring your leg down. All right, and then we'll come to your wall again. And either get a bolster or fold a skinny blanket. So you can sit against the wall in Baddha Konasana, and you'll also need a brick. If you have 2 bricks, even better. So I was mentioning that she has, in the sequence that she taught, she has most of the poses of the immunity sequence, but she also included several of the poses that are in the emotional stability sequence, and this is one of them, Baddha Konasana. Okay, so Baddha Konasana is not, it's not that it's not good for immunity, I'm sure that it is, but yeah, I just found it fascinating what she chose to teach. So one thing, when you sit in Baddha Konasana with the support of the wall, it helps your groin release a little bit more. Partly, particularly if you're tight in this pose, we have this tendency to kind of release backwards and move the torso backwards, and it tightens the groin. But when you have the wall support, you can lift up a little bit more readily. Then my knees are about even with my pelvic bones. They're a little bit high, but so you could sit up a little bit higher. Other thing that's nice to do is find just the right support. So I'm not trying to wedge everything in so that my knees are actually higher than they need to be. I'm just trying to provide a tiny little bit of support to my outer legs. So for me today, the blankets, the blocks are just kind of in right at my outer knee. And I feel, when I feel that support of the outer leg, I can feel my groin releasing. Now, if I really also pair that with pressing the heels in to get the outer hips even a little firmer, groin releases more. And then what I can find is, you know what? I can move my blocks out a little bit. And I just kind of keep on going through that process that when the outer leg is supported, when I'm really working my feet against each other, I feel the release come into the inner groin. And lo and behold, I can actually let my blocks release a little bit more. You can also use folded blankets. Oh, when I have just that little bit of support of the outer hips, the outer knees, and I really suck my femur bones in by pressing my heels together, the groin releases more, and now I can move my bricks out a little bit more. So I wasn't supporting because I had or didn't have knee pain. I was just playing with the support of, oh, it feels nice for the outer legs to be supported. And then I get release on the inner groin. All right, then place your hands on the outside of your knees and bring your legs back up. And then stretch your legs out into Dandasana. You can even work with the brick between your feet here in the Skandasana. And this is, she didn't teach this, but it's just something I put together in my mind is, you know, we work with the brick between the feet a lot to push the big toes against the brick, and that translates into more action in the leg. But there's also a sense of, you can also, when you do that, it keeps that inner ankle stable, right? So that wavering of the inner ankle that we saw in Ardha Chandrasana and Parshva keeps the legs from working as firmly. Right? And so we have to take control of the root of the pose, let's say the hips, to still the fluctuations of the ankle, but you can also work the opposite way. So here we've got stability in the ankles, okay, by pressing the big toes against the brick, which translates into more firmness around the hips and the quadriceps. And so sometimes you work, Mr. Iyengar says, from the root to the shoot, but you can also work from the shoots up into the roots. All right, so now we're going to do a couple of seated forward bends, but Abhi had us do them in a particular way. Okay. So I'm just going to get some support to show you. I was wanting to demonstrate something without having a yoga chair so people could see some options, and I had this little step stool, okay, around when I was putting some things in, and I realized it makes a really perfect yoga prop. All right, but I'll show you what we're going to do with it in just a second. But you're going to want a little bit of blanket to support your buttocks, just like a double or a single fold. And Abhi was very insistent that when we do this particular forward bend, that you want to make sure that your head is higher than the lower back. So if I were just to go into Janu Shirshasana without thinking about anything, you see how my back is kind of rounded and my head is lower? So what I want instead is to work my legs. So the left leg's in Dandasana. This is here, but I want to extend forward. So that my head is higher or is in the line with my back. So I have this little perfect step stool that I discovered by looking around the house. And I can pat it, and I can fold my arms right on my head or above my head, and it feels really good. I can also hold up higher. You could do this with any kind of chair. You just have to have the ability to move away. And it's also the principle behind, you know, using a bolster with some blanket support and folding forward. And if I'm really insistent about my head being higher than my back at first, I really have to have more support. Okay? But just find some support of some sort that you can use to do Janu Shirshasana with a lot of support. So it's really like the concave backstage almost, and then you just fold forward as much as you need to. My folding chair is really, my folding stool is actually really awesome because it's got a little bar in back of it that I can press my foot into. And then I can reach forward through it. It might even be better than a yoga chair in some ways for the forward bending. And if I were being, you know, more adventurous, I could even go down to the lower step of the stool. But just find a comfy Janu Shirshasana for you. This is another pose along with Baddha Konasana that is on the emotional stability sequence, but it's not in the immunity sequence. But you do want to, those of you using the chair, try and get at least some kind of make sure a blanket, you don't want the head to be on a hard surface. So you maybe want to fold your hands and put your head on your hands or get another blanket. Sticky mat's fine, Allison. There you go. Yeah. And then I can see some of you have your hands kind of holding onto the back of the chair, which is great. But also see what happens when you raise your hands up a little bit more. So, you know, like Marcia, you're up on a bolster, but you can reach your hands up to the chair seat and you can keep your elbows out a little bit wider. And so you can experiment with yeah, that looks good. I like that additional opening in the armpits and lengths on the sides of the body. But you should hopefully are feeling a nice soothing sensation that really comes from the seated forward bend. And then pull yourself up, stretch your legs out into Dandasana, and then do the second side. Your second side might be a little bit different. So you might need a little bit more support. You might need a little bit of less support to see what's true for you today. And so just go ahead and just do the version of Shirshasana where your foot is more in like a Vrikshasana than when you bring your knee way out wide. So your bottom leg has to work strongly. Okay, so it's got a Dandasana, a Baddha Konasana. Another thing that I'm actually seeing I can do that's very nice with the chair is my left hip is a little tighter, and so it kind of pulls me away from my straight leg. So I can actually use the chair to help myself turn my torso a little bit more evenly toward my straight leg, and then I can fold forward from there. Particularly with a lot of support, forward bends are very soothing for the psyche. Sometimes, if you have tight hamstrings, they can be a little bit of frustrating, but if you have enough support where it's easy to extend forward, then you have more capacity for them to be soothing for you. Forward bends are also a really nice place to watch your breath. As you inhale, you can usually extend a little bit more. As you exhale, see if you can move a little bit more deeply into the pose by drawing your abdomen in. And you may find that, oh, I can push my chair a little bit further away as I've been staying here. And then go ahead and also experiment with where you keep your hands. They feel nice with your forearms folded and on your forehead is really nice. But it's also really nice to support the head and have your hands a little bit higher. Just find out what works for you. And then come up and be in Dandasana again. And then we'll go forward for Paschimottanasana. So here in Paschimottanasana, I've actually got my setup where I'm pressing my feet against this back chair rung. And then I'll fold forward and my forehead comes right to the top of the stool. And I hold on to the top of the stool with my hands. And it's really great. I'm not saying you have to go out and buy a new kitchen stool or anything, but if you happen to have one of these already, give it a go. Bring it out of your kitchen or out of your garage and bring it into your yoga room and see, does not only my yoga chair, but my yoga stool. But I could really feel, just because that support was so perfectly set up for me, the second I went into the pose, I really could just feel, wow, my brain hit that support, or my forehead hit the support, and my whole consciousness just zapped inward. So in addition to the emotional, the immunity sequence poses, just add some Baddha Konasana into your life. Add some seated forward bends into your life. I do a lot of Baddha Konasana sitting at my coffee table, where I do some writing. It's right in front of my sofa. And so I have the back support for my sofa, my computer's on the coffee table, and I get some Baddha Konasana in several times a day. All right, and then go ahead and come all the way up. Sit in Dandasana. And see if you can feel the effect of those two seated forward bends on your consciousness. And then we'll do a Parshva Dandasana. So press your feet, or press the heels down into the floor. I have my, whatever you are standing or folded forward on, you see how I have my hand against the stool, and I can turn. It would be even better if I had a brick for my backhand, and I keep my elbows wide so I can turn a little bit more. Extend through your inner feet, lift your quadriceps up, lengthen up through your side ribs, and turn and rotate. And then come back to the center and do the same thing to the other side. Keep your leg action strong, like you still had a brick between your feet. Lengthen up through your side ribs and turn and rotate. And then come back to the center. All right, the last pose she had us do in the sequence is a supported Setubandha. The ideal setup prop-wise would be to have a vertical bolster, a blanket for your head, and 2 bricks for your feet. I realize you may not have all of this stuff, okay? But some of you do. And the other thing that makes it even more luscious, okay, is to have a second blanket, which you can roll to put underneath the neck. Okay? So that would be the Mondo Deluxe setup. I'm going to show that, but then I'm just going to show you some alternatives. So when you're working with this vertical bolster, you start up off on the bolster and you start with your knees bent, and then you just slide off until the back of the head and your shoulders are on the floor, but the bolster lifts the chest up. And then you just have bricks to support the feet. And it feels incredible, particularly with the blanket roll underneath the neck. But suppose you just aren't on your yoga journey yet, where you have the bolster and a bunch of blankets. There's several things that you can do. One of them is, if you have 2 blankets, you can fold them in like this trifold, where they basically make a bolster. Okay? So you don't need a special bolster. You could fold 2 blankets and do the same thing off of the 2 blankets. You could also roll blankets in each other. That also works really nicely. Again, they don't have to even be yoga blankets. I mean, look around your house. Maybe you've got a quilt. Maybe you've got a bunch of old towels that you're not really using for anything. You could roll them together. So you can make a bolster. And if you really can't find anything to make a bolster with, if you have your brick, you can do good old brick Setubandha. That feels almost as good. It just doesn't have the same support of the spine.
And suppose you don't even have a brick or a set of blocks. Okay, then you can do Chatushpadasana. Let's see if you can get into one of those poses. And if you have the bolster, great. If you have blankets, great. If you have bricks, great. But it should feel very, very soothing. I was amazed. Abby was saying, and this way of working, it was actually even more important for the back of the neck to be supported and the shoulders to be firmly down. And I said, well, my back of my neck is never going to touch the floor. And so I really did take the time to make the blanket roll. And it was amazing to me how much more relaxation I immediately felt when that neck was supported. It was very soothing. I use that word a lot, but it's the word that really comes to mind to describe the experiences that I'm having in some of these yoga poses. It's not like I have this conscious awareness when I'm going around in my life that I need to be soothed, but when I get into a yoga situation like this and I feel soothed, it makes me realize, oh, there's something causing me some level of non-soothing feeling. Even if I'm not consciously aware of it until I feel soothed. Well, that's also a little bit of just a pep talk to, perhaps kind of sometimes I just feel like, oh, I don't want to bother, it feels good enough. But when you do just take that little extra time to make everything just right, the immediate reward is quite palpable. And then I have to ask myself, why am I not willing to do that for myself all the time? What obstacle is that? Setu Bandha is really also another great pose where you can really watch the breath. As you can very palpably feel the inhalation because of the lift of the chest. And you can palpably feel the exhalation and the abdomen draw in. And then keeping that nice inward feeling as much as you can, just bend your knees. And if you have room just to slide straight off of your setup toward the head side, go ahead and do that. If you need to roll off because of just the space and the configuration of things, go ahead and do that. And then come into Shavasana. And the Shavasana of your choice. You can put your legs up on the chair, which you might still have around. You can put the bolster underneath your legs. You could put your chest up on the bolster with some head support. And also, we've been talking about that prone Shavasana a fair bit, where you can fold your forearms and put them on your forehead or have a little bit of blanket underneath your forehead. It's also very restful. And just pick the Shavasana that speaks to you in this particular moment. That could also just be being flat on the floor. Let your eyes release into the back of your head. Let your tongue release away from the roof of your mouth. Unclench your jaw. Let the back of the throat release. Let the sides of the throat release. Let the base of the throat release. Let your ears draw inward. Completely relax the features of your face. Become quiet within. Observe the quality of this Shavasana after this particular sequence. And observe its effect on you. Patanjali tells us that yoga is the practice of stilling the fluctuations of the mind. Asana is just one of the many tools toward that aim. When we still the fluctuations of the mind through asana and other practices, we come to dwell in the space of our own true splendor. Be in that space. Abide there. And from that seat of your true self, from the space of your own true splendor, inhale. Use your inhalations to bring that awareness of your true self with you as you go about your work in the world. Place your hands on your rib cage. Bend your knees. Roll over to your right side. And use your hands to press yourself back up. Sit up straight and tall. Lift your chest well. Roll your shoulder bones back. Bring your shoulder blades in, away from the neck and into the center of the body so that the chest opens. And then close your eyes and fold your palms together to your heart. Observe the effect that your practice has on you. Observe it on every layer of your being, from the physical to the most deeply spiritual. In gratitude to the benefit you receive from your practice of yoga, in gratitude to the people of the opportunity to learn and study and practice yoga with, and in gratitude to the lineage of Hatha Yoga itself, as practiced by BKS Iyengar, reaching back to the sages of India and down their line of teachers and students to you, here on the mat in Austin, Texas, or wherever you happen to be in the world. Now, namaste. All right, I'm unmuting everyone so you can say goodbye.
Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome. It's good to see everyone.
That was fantastic. Question.
Good. I'm glad you liked it. I liked it too. Pretty amazing.
Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Anne.